Welcome to a Homegrown Family Podcast, where we grow the produce and the kids.
Hey everyone, welcome to a Homegrown Family Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Metler, and it's been a hot minute since I put out an episode, and I feel like it's been forever. It's been since June, and since I put out an episode for y'all. So, thank you all for who are continuing to listen, and thank you all who are now just beginning to listen. I just wanted to let you know that I haven't forgotten about everybody. It's just that I've had a lot of things going on in life, and so, this isn't my moneymaker, so it's what it is. And as much as I enjoy putting out this content, family comes first and things like that. So, anywho, a lot of different things happening. It's just been a whirlwind for the last 6 to 9 months. Kind of just want to go back quick and let you guys know that I have not forgotten about you. I'm hoping to put out here now, bi-weekly, 2 to 3 episodes a month kind of thing coming up here, hopefully. And then I just want to let you guys know that this podcast is just something I do for fun. I don't get paid for it. I have some donations that come in once in a while. It's nothing remotely close to the time I put into this thing. But I created this podcast to share some of my knowledge and experiences and kind of create an autobiography in ways, have these recordings later in life for my children to discover and go back and listen to. One of the many fruits of this podcast has been so far is when my Uncle Bernie passed away. Many people were able to hear Bernie tell, one of his stories one last time, through listening to the Hunting with Uncle Bernie episode, And so that was really kind of what this podcast is about in ways. And I don't always share stories about or with uncles or with grandparents or things like that, but I try to incorporate those in there throughout this podcast, right? Or creating this podcast here just at the turn of the new year. So Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. Still celebrating the Christmas season, even though it's almost over here. Trying to get back into it here, New Year's resolution, right? Kind of do what I did last year, plus some, right? And so, yeah, I did get to do some pheasant hunting this fall and some deer hunting this fall, and so it just made me think about that because I mentioned Uncle Bernie, and I was able to use one of his shotguns that I acquired after his passing. I was able to shoot a pheasant, so I was pretty excited about that. Went deer hunting out in western North Dakota before moving to Minnesota. So that was my last resident hunt in North Dakota I had this past fall. So more on that to come. So in this podcast, it's just really a platform for me to talk about my hobbies and things I enjoy. So to kind of break it down again for everybody who's just hopping on board or, it's been a 9-month hiatus. So the title of the podcast is A Homegrown Family. It's not the homegrown family. My family is not the script to follow. My family is not the one end-all be-all way to do things. Although I'm biased and I think I'm doing things, or my wife and I are doing things pretty good. Things are turning out for us. We're blessed in many ways. And then so that's A. Homegrown. Homegrown basically describes the topics we just covered. Homegrown can be anything from literally growing things in the garden. It can include many topics like gardening and hunting and mushroom foraging, tapping maple syrup and other farm-related things. One of the craziest things is that one of the most listened to episodes is my episode called Raising Sheep. And I'm like, wow, is there no other YouTuber or podcaster out there talking about raising sheep? But I have one episode that I seem to get listens to that episode every single month. I'm surprised. So thank you all for listening to those podcast episodes. I'm hoping to get more into topics like homeschooling and raising children. I got into that in a little bit by interviewing some friends, about homeschooling and their experiences growing up and things like that, and others with other people who are doing homeschooling. And eventually, that's kind of my wife and I's goal is that we can take part in that community and homeschool our children as well. I just have a 4-year-old, and so we're not quite there yet, but we're doing our own, homeschooling type activities, at home already. And so the last component is family. So A, homegrown family. And I take an opportunity in this podcast to talk about different family members or past. For example, in episodes titled Lady in a Sunday Dress, I just take some time to talk about my mom and how she grew up. And in the episode of Man, the Beast, the Legend, I basically interview my dad, talk about their upbringing and kind of get an idea of where I come from. And those are really the episodes that is more autobiography or like sharing some of the history with family and anything else. And another episode called Keep It Weird. That's the story about how I met my wife. So that's kind of a fun one. Give that a listen. But I also try to share more of my own life experiences, mentor stories, and episodes from time to time. So I kind of traveled through a little bit of some college stories, and things like that. I'm hoping to get more into some of my first job experiences and what I did in life there. And so that's kind of upcoming, maybe something to look forward to, maybe in the springtime here this year. But let's get to the question. Everybody's been asking here listening, why have you not put out new content? I enjoyed listening to you so much. I look forward to all your episodes, but you haven't produced anything for, since June. Well, life is life. And so that's my answer to that, And podcasting isn't how I make a living. And frankly, family comes first. And so my last episode was in June. And then I did do an interview with my grandma at 100 years old in July. I haven't put out that episode, but that's probably up and coming here, probably next, And so we closed on a sold as is house in June. And it definitely was sold as is. Many projects, and maybe we'll kind of get into that a little bit. We moved in September to like a semi-functional house. Still projects going on all the time. So I'm spending a lot of my time doing a lot of that stuff. And then, that's kind of been occurring. And then my wife and I welcomed our second child into our house here in December. So kind of getting into that. She's only another girl, by the way. And she's only 2 weeks old on Friday this week. So by the time you get this episode, she'll be 3 weeks old probably. So this episode, I want to share some of my experiences with buying a country house, right? So homegrown family, finally like in the homesteading arena of things. We bought, let's back up a little bit, I guess. Nora and I have been wanting to get into the country and start living our dreams of this, homesteading thing and kind of getting some animals and being able to bring our countries into the outside farm setting where both Nora and I grew up. And so we're searching on Zillow, and we've been looking at all these houses, and so many of them were out of our budget, and they're, 30 or 45 minutes from the town in which we work, and it wasn't adding up, and we're like, well, finally we're just like, maybe we should just stop looking, trying to look for something either closer to my folks' place or closer to Nora's folks, which is about 45 minutes from the town in which we work, is where she grew up, where her folks live, and where her sister lived, and was married to my best friend from high school and everything. So we're kind of looking in that region, and my wife has a medical contract with the hospital there for the next 5 years. She's working on her neonatal nurse practitioner degree, so that kind of tied us into having to narrow ourselves to living closer to her folks. The idea of moving back to the farm for me, I've talked about the farm and interviewed Dad and talked about all the different things we do at my folks' farm, which I definitely, wanted to move back to the farm. It's kind of always been my goal. And Nora's job and requiring us to live closer to bigger hospitals and things with that, and we got a 5-year commitment to that, and so she wouldn't, not to say that's the end all be all reason we moved to closer to her in-laws. I mean, our children have cousins there present, whereas back at my folks' farm, there's cousins are, an hour away. And so kind of the idea is there that was more of a family decision for my kids to be able to have cousins around. And maybe that'll change someday, but that's kind of where we're at now. Nora's going to be finishing up her certification for her degree here in May, so that'll be nice. Start working full-time in that department in August, so we're looking forward to that. Yeah, so I guess, I don't know, not much else to say with that, but one thing that always tugs on my heart a little bit with the move is that, my in-laws have 2 of their 3 kids nearby within 10 miles, and my folks, their nearest kids like an hour away, but we're all closer to 3, so relatively close in general. But anyways, going back to buying a house here and kind of getting on some acres, so we got to the point where we're tired of looking. Figured miles away another year, wait till Nora's done with schooling. And then, of course, we saw a house that was on 5 acres, literally listed that night I was looking, for $280,000. 7 miles from Nora's folks, like 3 miles from her sister's place. the very same road actually, and it was just listed for sale. And I was like, oh wow, it's about a 40-minute work commute, not terrible. I'm like, no, let's set up a visit. Let's set up a showing for the next day, see what we've got to work with. This house is going to go fast. It's definitely lower priced, sold as is situation compared to houses that we've been looking at. It's kind of actually within our budget for the most part. The house needs some work. We saw some potential. We really didn't know how much work it was really going to need. And Nora and I were still pretty comfortable with just living in Fargo for another year. And personally, I had goals of not settling for less than 10 acres, knowing what I'm leaving behind back in my folks' farm area. And I always wanted to make sure I had high quality water. I didn't want to buy a house in the middle of a field, no trees. So this house had, a swamp to the west, tree rows and stuff to the north, and to the north of that was some CRP land. And we were kind of tucked in this little spot there where it was, the best 5-acre combination I saw. It had, probably 2 acres or 3 acres of lawn / miniature pasture and some trees. And it had some potential to get a little bit of everything that I potentially wanted, even though it's not 100%, what I was shooting for. Well, we figured maybe we could put an offer on it. We put an offer on it for $270 with an escalation clause up to $290. We figured the place was going to go easily for over $300,000. So Nora and I walked away, not thinking much of it, figuring that there's no way that we ever get this place. But it was a matter of a day or two, my realtor says, hey, the group accepted your offer. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? And I say the group because the mother that was currently living at the house, health-wise, decreased rapidly, and the kids were getting together that weekend to determine who or what was going to buy the place, right? They basically countered our $270,000 offer with $290. They didn't even know about our escalation clause. They just said, hey, we'll take your offer at $290. And I'm like, no way. Like, are you serious? That's just ridiculous. I can't believe that. And the realtor goes, well, they got offers over $300,000, perhaps even in like $320 range. And they took our offer because we had no contingencies. I didn't need to sell my house in town to be able to afford a place in the country. Ultimately I did, but I could borrow money from family and stuff to make the down payment and everything and kind of slowly sell my city place. And I was like, no way. He's like, yeah, well, it's clear cut. You can get a deal done here within a month. And this is kind of what the kids want to do, get it done and get it clean. And could I counter with a septic inspection or a water, inspection, appraisal, whatever. And he's like, Joe, I think if you do that, they're going to go up to the next price up. And to be frank, the county that way which we moved, the septic systems have a new updated regulations, and so basically 80% of the septics were failing or not being compliant upon audit or inspection. And so that basically put us on the hook for having to buy a new septic, / would put the potential buyer, if we were not to buy the place, on the hook for a new septic. So ultimately, against my better judgment, I really wanted to get a couple of those inspections in, but the price was right. And so we said, sure, let's do it. So we kind of put ourselves in that max range, $290. Got appraised, later on, and it actually appraised for like $340. So we did pretty decent on the price point. We just had a ton of stuff to do with the place, right? First thing it was cleaning it out, gutting it out. There's so much trash and junk left over. It was ridiculous. And the basement was pretty cluttered to start. And unfortunately, it turned out that there was a resident cat in the house. The cat got booted out like the day after we bought the place. It turned out that cat literally pooped everywhere. Like, the one half of the basement was basically its litter box. It was disgusting. And my wife was pregnant, so she's like, I can't touch it. Pregnant women aren't supposed to be around people cat matter. And I'm just like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I probably spent a whole week of evenings trying to clean this cat crap. It was just, I don't know, it almost made me gag doing it. So that was the first thing. I was cleaning that cat crap out of there, painting the walls in the basement. Of course, I only got partway done with that. Still working on that. But, so that was the biggest thing. I was kind of like, oof, man, that was rough. And then, like, the first or second weekend after we moved in, I had water seepage coming up through the basement drain. And what the heck? It turned out that my sump pump went out, so I had to go buy a new, not sump pump, I had to go buy a new septic pump. And my septic pump went bad. I was like, what are the chances of that? inspection, they would have caught that. So, oh, you eat $300 there or whatever the price was, I spent more money of equity from selling my place in town on this house than I ever thought I would right away. Then we ended up getting the water tested because, I wanted to make sure, where we're sitting at with water and everything like that. And, hey, it wasn't hard. It didn't have too much calcium and other hard mineral buildup materials in it. Didn't have, high lead or anything. Didn't have there's some bacteria, but not like any of the harmful kind. It's like, oh, it's pretty decent. Oh, wait, arsenic's high. Okay. Well, I don't remember the units in which arsenic is measured, but the EPA limit for arsenic used to be 50, and now it's 10, or whatever those units are. And our water sample came back at 47. I'm like, oh man, that stinks. So we started bottling water, getting water from the in-laws house, bringing jugs over, because we didn't want to drink any of this stuff. Like, oh, that's like 5 times the legal limit for what the EPA says should be a limit for arsenic. And so I installed Menards reverse osmosis under the sink, thinking, hey, well, that can work out. We can drink that water out of that. And then we sent that water in to get tested. And it's still in like the 20s for arsenic, which is like double the EPA limit still, which kind of stunk. And being that we're having a kid come soon, we don't want to take baths and have kids drinking water that's like 5 times the EPA limit in arsenic. So arsenic was an issue. Maybe I'll get into a little bit more of that in a different episode as far as talking about what we did with that. But so then my brother Lawrence, he was like, hey, you want to come over and help me wire up this radon system thing I got to put in my house? Because he just bought a house too, actually. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then he had like a little machine that tested the radon amounts. And sorry, I don't remember what the units are for measuring radon either. But the safe limit or alarm limit is like 4 of whatever unit that is. And Lawrence was hugging 5, hugging up in 6, and he got his down to like 1, so he's good to go. I'm like, hey, can I borrow your little machine? Test my place. I test my place. My average is like 8 or 7. Anyways, still almost twice what the radon amount should be. So now I got to put a radon mitigation system in. That guy's coming here like later next week, so I got to put that in. So I spend a lot of money on this stuff. It's ridiculous. And then I was still having some issues with plumbing down the basement. I kept on having stuff come up my basement drain, which was plugged when I bought the place. So it really makes me think that they knew they had problems but didn't disclose it, which frustrates me. But the owner of the place I bought, this kid, lives just down the road, so I really don't want to raise a stink about it too much, but don't think I'd win that one in court anyways. Yeah, so I had a plumber in here and rotor-rootering down the main lines in the basement and stuff, and he's basically like, yeah, I think your pipes are like really corroded, because he said that his little rotor-rooting machine is basically an inch wide, and it was scraping the whole way through on a 2-inch pipe. So I think that's my next project, is to blow concrete in the basement and fix the piping so that way I stop having backup issues, and the house has smelled like it's had a sewer leak in it. Improper venting probably from what the plumber says in the house. So, sold as is. Definitely, man, can be frustrating, but ultimately, it's going to be really helpful. We've already reaped some of the benefits of living close to family and things like that. And I'm going to share a couple stories here quick about some of the country living experiences we've had that have been positives, or we just had in general. Of course, the other thing is the year that we move in is it just rain every other 5 days, and every time we come in from town to go work on the house in the country, we had to mow grass for like 4 hours because it was like raking hay and cutting hay. My father-in-law actually got his bush hog and rotary mower and mowed the first time when we came there to mow the lawn, because it was literally like 6 to 10 inches tall. But I want to share 2 stories here, I guess, quickly with you. And this is the reasons we moved the country, So we move in. The old garden that they had was a mess. There's gophers living in it. It's full of weeds and thistles and all sorts of stuff. But gopher, oh hey, I had an episode on gopher trapping. Take a listen. And I'm like, oh, I know how to trap gophers. And the previous owner actually left gopher traps sitting in their shop. So I go ahead and set a trap, and then the next day I go check it. I got one, and it was still alive. So PETA don't get after me, I guess. But they're like, well, I'm gonna show my daughter, this gopher, because she's never seen one, right? And then after I kill it and finish it off, I'll show her how the pocket gopher has pockets, and you can pull his cheeks. There's probably a little root mass in there or something, So I tell Sophie, hey, come here, let's take a look at this gopher. And I pull up the board. She looks at the gopher. Oh, it's still alive. Yeah, yep. Yeah, it is. And so kind of, showed it to her, and then I pulled it up with the trap, and it's looking around. I'm like, all right, well, Daddy's got to go take care of it. I got to pew it. I got to go pew it, because in her mind, you say pew, and that means something's going to die, right, or get killed. And I'm like, yeah, I got to go pew it. She's like, oh. Her face kind of turned somber a little bit. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go in the garage, and while you pew it, okay? I'm like, okay. So then I, whack it over the head of the stick, and then I bring it back. It's dead, right? It's pewed. And I show it to my daughter, and then she's like, here, look at it. Look at the cheeks. Look at the head. And she kind of petting me. She's like, oh, when's it going to wake up? Oh, man. And that's when it hit me. I was like, no way. I thought she made the connection of what it mean to be pewed. But she always thought it was a temporary thing. I had to tell her, I was like, no, when you pew something, it doesn't come back. This gopher's not coming back. And she held a pretty strong face, and she was like, no tears or anything. And she was just like, well, where's it going to go? Is it going to go in heaven? I'm like, yeah, it's going to go into animal heaven. Okay, with other gophers? I'm like, yep, it's going to be happy there. Okay. I'm like, oh man, well maybe she understood it. That wasn't too bad. You get that experience of life and death, which is kind of what I was trying to do. But at a 4-year-old, it might have been a little early. I go and throw it in the swamp and, or the swamp nearby, vegetation or whatever, let the cats get it or whatnot, or coyotes find it. And then I go walk inside and I just hear the sobbing from the basement. My wife's down in the basement doing some cleaning or something, and she's consoling my daughter, it's okay, Daddy pewed, My daughter's just sobbing, being consoled by my wife, and my daughter's just like, Daddy pewed the gopher, Daddy pewed it, he killed it, it's not coming back, and just bawling, and I'm like, oh my goodness, jeez. So she held a strong face for Dad, and then went inside and bawled her eyes out with my wife. But now she does understand pewing means death, and that's sometimes you're gonna experience that in the country. Like, for example, the first couple of weeks we were here, we had skunks coming in our yard, and that's the last thing I want is a skunk coming in at 3 in the afternoon, kind of a weird time, spray my daughter or spray our cat or dog or future dog or something or whatever, so I had to take care of some skunks too, and that was kind of a thing with her as well. But I told her we pewed them, but I just never showed her the dead skunk because it's just this, sneaky miss. So that's why I thought she had figured out that pewed means dead. But since she saw me shoot him and everything, But and then the other story I just kind of want to share is a pretty quick story. I had to go put the garbage can out to the end of the driveway, and I was like, "Hey, Sophie, you want to come with?" Sure. Actually, right away, I don't even think she wanted to. She's like, I don't want to, whatever. She doesn't want to go outside. I'm like, well, we're going to go take a look at the stars. Ooh, that sounds exciting. So we got to start rolling the garbage can down the driveway, which is, 200-foot driveway, 300-foot driveway, something like that. It's not super long, but big enough. And we're rolling down to the end of the driveway, and she's like, ooh, Daddy, these are pretty. I like the country house. You can see the stars. You don't see those in the city house. So that was consolation to me that we were in the right place to be raising our kids finally, getting the country and whatnot. So I'm sure my daughter's going to miss her pool dates and her parks that she can bike right next to, and all stuff. And I'm sure I'll have to create like a playground at my house to make up for it. But yeah, life's been busy. Life's been full of projects lately, and I'm hoping to get back into the rhythm and grind of this podcast stuff and kind of come up with some more episodes for you guys. But coming up next will probably be an interview with my grandma, who had turned 100 years old this past July. kind of like a more of an interview type of podcast. And that's coming up, even though it's probably recorded as if it occurred yesterday. Keep in mind on that one that one had occurred a while back. But she's still with us here today, and I'm looking forward to the next time I go home to my folks' farm to show Grandma our new daughter. But yeah, feel free, everybody, to get back in the groove of this podcast. I look forward to kind of interacting with you guys some more. Leave some comments, leave some reviews. 4 and 5 stars accepted. Actually, you can accept whatever you want. Frankly, it's not going to be the end-all, be-all if you give me a bad review. If you do, don't listen. Move on. But that's one thing I like about this podcast. There's always a little bit of something for somebody, but not something for everybody. So, you can reach me at ahomegrownfam@gmail.com. You can leave comments, below whatever type of platform you're listening on. Yeah. Till next time.